have the opportunity to ask you for a legal opinion and go into closed session if we think it could be facing litigation?
For sure.
So, okay. And again, because sometimes the appellate might be here, and there might be another side to the story from what they say, and again, we have that opportunity to say, okay, you can appeal to us, but we can go into closed sessions.
Right? I mean,
No, there's two pending right now.
we have a handful every year.
Yeah, I wouldn't say a handful. I think since I've been supervisor, I don't think I've done 14 of them.
But there's people that here know. That got denied, and we put on there, hey, there's an appeal process. You might get more appeals than we would have.
That's fair. That's fair.
That's my own.
Yeah, but the point is right now we have nothing. And so this, Rosemary wrote this, Planning Commission reviewed it, they recommended approval with a minor adjustment, we made that adjustment. I've got two people who are saying, I want to sue you, and I'm saying, just wait and we'll get this passed. So since they approved it Thursday, I said, can we put it on the agenda?
That makes sense.
We're only introducing it. It's already been published, it's already been noticed twice in Planning
Yes,
Commission,
yep.
right? It's been discussed publicly
Yep.
2 times.
Yeah, we
So it's not like we're sneaking something in and we're not passing it.
It's gonna go to the planning commission next?
It already has.
It already has.
Because
Yeah,
because it addresses the zoning ordinance,
Okay.
they oversee it. So they make a recommendation to
Then we
approve.
put it on, okay.
Right?
Yep.
With a change. Rosemary's made a change, so.
Okay,
I'll explain it when we get there, but that's,
makes sense to
F2.
me.
F2 is ordinance. F1, I'm sorry, E2 was,
Deficit elimination.
all right. Any other questions? Everybody good?
Yep.
All right. Wally? All right. Good evening, board members and residents. I'd like to call to order our regular meeting for June 24th, 2024. I'd ask that everyone present please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Matkins.
Here.
Mr. Brado.
Here.
Mr. Olgiati.
Here.
Mrs. Rose is asked to be excused. Mr. Tominello.
Here.
Mr. Witt here. Mr. Verkowski.
Here. Next on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda, which includes the approval of the regular board meeting minutes from June 10th, 2024, approval of the bills in the amount of $1,799,637.20, approval of the May 2024 revenue and expenditure report, approval of the Smart Fiscal Year 2025 Municipal Credit and Community Credit Contract, and approval to include an additional expenditure in the check run to reimburse Brian Badkins for fishing derby expenditures. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'd be looking for a motion.
So moved.
All right. Is there support?
I'll support that.
All right. We've got a motion by Mr. Olgiati with support by Mr. Brado to approve the consent agenda as presented. Discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you. Next is the approval of the regular agenda. Board members, we did discuss the addition of 2 items, E2, which would be approval of our deficit elimination plan. We can discuss that when we get there. And F2, an introduction of an ordinance regarding lot splits. So if there are no other changes, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the regular agenda with the addition of E2 and F2.
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
All right. Support by, so a motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mr. Badkins. Discussion. Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next is announcements. The Harrison Township Public Library just kicked off their Kids Summer Reading Program, which includes group events, free books, and prizes. Details about this event, as well as many other great events, can be found at the library's website, htlibrary.org. There's a link on our website to it. Tons of studies suggest that kids reading through the summertime really help them advance in their education, and the library has a really cool way of making it sort of fun. and connecting with others. So hopefully parents of young folks sign up. Our township offices will be closed July 4th and July 5th for the Independence Day holiday. Our Harrison Township Parks and Rec Committee is hosting concerts in the park at Waterfront Park. The first concert of the season is this Thursday, June 27th, and it features Freelance. They are scheduled to perform from 6 to 8:30 in the evening. We encourage you to bring your own chairs or blanket. There will be some snacks available, I believe, for sale by the Friends of the Library. For more information on these, as well as all other township events, you can call the supervisor's office, 586-466-1445. Visit our website at www.harrisontownshipmi.gov, or follow us on Twitter or X at HarrisonTWPMI. Any other announcements?
Just one, Mr. Supervisor. Just want to let residents know that absentee ballots for those that have already requested them or are on the permanent ballot list will be going out in the mail later this week, so you should see those in your mailbox, and you'll also receive an email from the clerk's office just letting you know that it's on its way.
All right, great. Anything else? Hearing none, we'll move forward on the agenda to item D1. Find that. Let's see. Here we go. This is regarding concrete repairs. So board members, on a fairly consistent basis, we go through the process throughout primarily the winter water break season, where we have to maybe bust up concrete, sidewalks, driveway approaches in order to access water mains and repair them. So during the second half of 2023 and the first half of this year so far, we've responded to and repaired over 52 water breaks. Unfortunately, 12 of those breaks occurred under concrete approaches, sidewalks, curbs, concrete roads. The Water and Sewer Department actually solicited bids. They received 3 quotes. After this was published, we did receive a 4th quote, and although it wasn't included, Luigi Fernandi was the low bidder. So the recommendation is to concur with the Public Services Director to award the low bid concrete proposal to Luigi Fernandi and Son Cement Company for repairs and replacement of concrete approaches, sidewalks, curbs, and road flags damaged during recent water breaks.
So moved.
All right, is there support?
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Tominello. So for many years, Premier was our low bidder. And this time around, Luigi Fernandi came in lower, so they did our sidewalk repairs last season, and work was good, so I have no reason to think this should be any problem. Any other discussion?
The specs on all of these the specs on all of these quotes are all the same, correct?
So what Justin solicited was certainly the same for every contractor, yes. There is no, in other words, this isn't like one person saying, well, I'm going to do substandard work, or, right.
Okay.
Yeah, so specifically with the Luigi Fernandi and Son, they list the various things that they'll adhere to, so.
That was my question, because I saw it there, but I didn't see it in some of the other
Right.
quotes. So,
Yep.
thank you.
Yep, no problem. Any other comments? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next on our agenda is from the clerk's office regarding our 2023 audit.
Yes, Board, tonight we will be hearing from our auditors, Raymond, for the presentation of the 2023 audits, which you have a copy there for you. So at this point, I'd invite up Daniel Clark, who is the partner that oversees our project, up to give us a little update here.
All right, good evening. See, this was a very exciting topic that everyone came out for tonight.
Definitely a barn burner.
So you should have received a couple documents, either via PDF or hard copy. So There are a couple documents that we do put together with the help of the township, and then they get submitted to Treasury for the filing deadline by the end of this month. So one of which is your actual financial statements in this, it's in this bound packet here. You would have also received a stapled letter. This is the board communication letter. And then we also issued a separate report this year over the audit of your ARPA dollar spending. So we did prepare a presentation which looks like this. I believe you would have gotten a copy. So this is going to talk about all the different things in these documents. So if you want to follow along in this presentation.
So the full audit is included in the board packet, and all, the whole nuts and bolts, the auditor's opinion, so forth. But for brevity, we're kind of going over a, condensed version here. So that's the hard copy that everybody has.
Yeah, and I can answer any questions within these documents, but typically the high-level summary is what we do for boards. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
And the three, as is a typical practice, the three full-timers, finance director, have sat with the auditors and reviewed this report. So, in other words, any red flags that would have popped up, we'd probably be talking about them now, and there were none, so.
All right, so with that, you want to turn to page 2 of the presentation. These are just the items that we're going to go over tonight. Turn to page 3, which is the team. This is very similar to last year. I think we only had one change of the supervisor level, but the same team worked audit this year as last year. So happy that we had some consistency in our team to work on that again this year. So we will point you to slide number 4 now, which is titled on the top, Board Communications. So these are going to be the important things that we want to just briefly mention tonight. So first and foremost, happy to state that you did receive or will be receiving an unmodified or a clean opinion on your December 31st, 2023 financial statements. So that's the highest opinion that can be given by an auditor. It's considered a clean opinion. Number 2, we are asked to present and communicate any new accounting pronouncements that may or may not impact your financial statements each year. There was a new one this year titled GASB, which stands for Government Accounting Standards Board, opinion number 96, related to SPITAs, which is short for subscription-based internet technology arrangements. So we assessed all those that the township had and implemented that as appropriate. Number 3, we're asked to assess any accounting estimates. So you folks have a pension, you have an OPEB, you have other things that are calculated based on certain estimates, and we assess those and deem those all to be equal. Number 4, happy to state we encounter no difficulties while performing the audit. So all questions that we asked were answered, all the information we requested was provided timely. The team was great to work with here at the township, so we appreciate all of Nikki's help, Adam, and folks at Treasury, as well as Ken. Appreciate everyone's participation, because it does take everyone to get this done. So then happy to state in number 5, the records were clean, so we had no material misstatements. So as part of the audit, we look at your numbers, make sure that they're materially stated. We had no audit adjustments, either past or that needed to be posted as part of the audit process. So the records that were provided to us were clean, and again, that made the audit go smoothly. And then number 6, furthermore, we found no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies of note. So again, that speaks to the high quality of controls and processes of the township. As part of a new auditing standard this year as well, we were asked to look at a few different things or new things than we have maybe in the past. So we did have a couple items for further consideration, so more management letter comments or recommendations. If you turn to slide 5, we have 5 different, and most of these relate to IT, which is kind of becoming more of an important focus at all of our municipalities that we're working with. And you'll see we had 5 different recommendations that we talk with the folks here at the township, and they're actively working on, or they've already implemented policies and procedures to address each of these. So again, not findings, more just items that we feel like are more best practices.
Daniel, just before you get past this part, what's good, and I think at this point, was every year we usually have a list, and sometimes there's repeat items on this list, and through the hard work in the finance department and the treasurer's office, there was no repeat items like, hey, we didn't follow through on something from last year's audit, so I think that's just an important thing to note here.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, so typically, as part of the audit process, if you have findings last year, you look at them, make sure they've been addressed. If they are, then we obviously can remove them. So there were no such repeat findings this year, and these are all new comments to consider this year. So any questions on that? If not, you can turn to slide 6. So I did mention that we did do a separate audit of your ARPA money. So your ARPA dollars were transferred into your general fund and spent on appropriate purposes through that transfer of funds. Last year, they were sitting as unearned until it was determined what the ARPA money was going to be used on. So this year, they were recognized as revenue. And because you had more than $750,000 in ARPA dollars that were spent, so you had about $2 million that was recognized this year. We did a separate compliance exam, and we issued a findings and response letter noting that there were no findings, everything was spent on its appropriate purpose, so.
So again, just a point of clarification there, we did not spend $2.1 million of federal money, but just the transfer of the ARPA funds in was over $1.5 million. So we would normally not have maybe necessarily needed this, but moving that money was, in theory, spending it. It was reimbursing us for lost revenue, which was acceptable under ARPA guidelines.
Yeah, and to Ken's point, a lot of municipalities did choose to go that route. So it was allowed, if you had less than $10 million that wanted to be used for what they were calling lost revenue, that was a lot of the way municipalities went, because that's sort of the cleanest way to use up those funds or to apply those to the appropriate purpose. So that is what the township decided.
And I think the state even gave us an incentive. If we had it done by a certain deadline, we'd get another 1% of revenue sharing or something like that. So.
Oh. All right, so now we'll just quickly move into some financial highlights. If you go to slide 7. And this slide will specifically talk to what we were just speaking to about that revenue from ARPA. So you'll see all the way over to the right in 2023, the general fund had revenue of 5.895. So you'll see that jumped up from last year. You had about 4.2 million. So almost 2 million more in revenue last year compared to this year. Again, that's that recognition of that ARPA dollars. Your expenses did go up, but not significantly like the revenue. You were at 4.2 million in expenses. Last year you had 3.7, so about an increase of about 500,000. So you added to fund balance 1.694. So a nice increase. You'll see back in 2020 through today, to date, you've added dollars to your fund balance since 2020. Over the last 6 years, there was only 1 year in which you ate into the balance, and that was back in 2019. But since then, it's been positive increase to your general fund.
And really, 19 was a lot of spending for flooding, basically. That was,
So if you move to slide 8, just going to talk about some major revenue line items of the township. So this is all your governmental funds across general, police, fire, et cetera. That top line are your taxes and special assessments. So this is the 6-year trend all the way back to 2018. You had 9.9 million in property taxes compared to 9.912. So you had an increase of just about 13,000 in property taxes. You'll see each year though that's increased. So I would expect that to continue. Property increase. That second line is your intergovernmental, so that's your state revenue, your federal revenue. The reason that jumped up from last year 3.89 to this year 5.4, again, you recognized that those ARPA dollars. So next year in 2024, I would expect that intergovernmental revenue to kind of come back down because you're obviously not going to have that ARPA money a second time. And then slide 9 is one last slide on, or I guess I have 2 more slides on the general fund. So slide 9 is your general fund balance. All the way over to the right in 2023, you're currently sitting at about 5.3 in general fund balance. That's an increase over last year. You had 3.6. Again, I keep saying the same thing, but obviously added those dollars from ARPA, which increased that fund balance just under $2 million. And then slide 10 compares your fund balance to a year's worth of expenditures. So you're currently sitting at about 15 months of general fund expenditures in your fund balance, increase about 3 months over last year. The watchdog groups always say it's important to have this number above the 3 to 4 month range, to make sure you're not running into cash flow. Kind of the top of the range would be anything approaching 3 years would mean that you're not spending the money on its intended purpose. So you're obviously well below the 3 years, and you're in a nice spot in increase. I'm here though that there's going to be some spending in 2024 that will probably bring that 15 months down closer to the 12 months that it was last. So this is a good sign. Your general fund is in a very healthy position. And then we'll just talk about some budget numbers, so budget to actuals. So your three major funds are general, police, and fire. So this first slide, slide 11, talks about your general fund. In each of these sets of columns, the first column is your final budget. That darker column is the actual, and then the difference is the over-under. So for general fund, you budgeted $5.8 million in revenue. You came in almost 5.9, so you beat revenue by about 75,000. You actually came in under for expenditures, about 21,000, and then for other financing uses, so most of that relates to transfers, you came in just about even at 3,000 over. So you had budgeted a 1.6 million add to fund balance. You came in at 1.69, so you beat that by about 92,000. Which none of those numbers are very significant, so it just shows that the township is budgeting very close to what you're actually experiencing. And then the next slide, slide 12, is your fire fund. So similar, not seeing big swings between final and actual, so again, budgeting pretty close to what's happening both on the revenue and expenditure side. The fire fund, you added to fund balance all the way to the right, 223,460. So again, a nice a beat on budget in that fund. And then slide 13 is your police fund. Again, no significant difference between final and actual, and you added to the police fund about 214,668. And then we just have one slide on your business type activities, so your water and sewer, and then your refuse collection. This is just a trend over the last 6 years. That top line is your water sewer. That continues to increase as rates change and as the usage change. But you had 9.9, almost $10 million in water and sewer revenue, an increase of about 500,000 over last year. Then that bottom line is your refuse collection. You're at 1.2, almost 1.3 in refuse collection revenue. And that has stayed relatively stable for the last 6 years. So no significant changes. And then the last slide tonight, we always communicate upcoming accounting pronouncements. I won't bore you with the details, but there's 4 of them coming up that we work directly with Nikki. There's 2 that are applicable for next year that we will have discussions here soon, just any application that they might have. That is all I officially had, but happy to open it up for any questions.
All right, well, I can say, so you had said things went smooth. I can say from our side of the table, things also went very smooth, and we're happy with the work that your team did and the results. Are there any questions for the auditor?
The Jefferson Bridge, will that be coming off of next year's budget? Whatever our share is?
Well, it's whatever year we.
Yeah, I don't know if so there will be expenses this year for the bridge, but the major expenses are likely to occur in 2025.
Okay, that's right.
So there's the hope that some path expenses, so we had, I know this isn't specific to this, but it's okay. We had that kind of kickoff meeting for the engineering, and there was a discussion. The primary source of funding for the actual bridge is TAP funds, which are federal funds. And the TAP funds are, what's the word I'm looking for? They're restricted, there's a term for it, but they're dependent on the connecting paths. Basically, TAP said, we're not gonna allow you to put a bridge in and have grass at each end. We want paths connected to other paths at each end. So the restrictions were, you can't build the bridge until you do those connections. Our engineering firm said that their experience, well, the Spalding Decker that got the job, they said their experience is that if they can show that they're being all done at one time, they can, go forward with the TAP project. So it isn't clear if we're gonna do the paths first and then the bridge, or if we're gonna do it all at once, but they seem to think we can do it all at once, which means it'll likely occur all in 2025.
Okay.
So we likely won't have much to talk about the bridge in next year's audit. But maybe when we're talking about the audit, we'll be breaking ground and building a bridge. Any other questions or comments?
Need a motion to receive and file the audit presentation?
Yes, sir.
I'll make that motion.
Support. We've got a motion by Mr. Tominello with support by Mr. Bankins, was it?
Yes.
Okay. To receive and file the 2023 audit presentation. Any discussion on the motion?
It just, again, I thank you to the accounting department. They all worked very hard on this to make it successful. So they spent a lot of hours, a lot of time, especially Ms. Gibbous, our finance director, but all the staff in there. But like, it's, every department in the township has some time to spare, time to spend on this. Water and sewer spends a bunch of time, building. Everyone, this touches the entire township. It's a team effort. It's gone smoother in the last couple of years. And, it's everything.
Yeah, during the audit process, I hate to see messages from Nikki in my inbox, because I know I have to come up with a contract or a document or something. And just for reference, because it was certainly a part of a previous discussion and negotiation, the auditing and preparation of documentation for the bond was prepared largely by the finance director for our OMID and mid bonds, the large regional sewer system thing. So that was one of the agreements that we came to, and Nikki was able to take care of that. So there was much less work on the part of our auditor with the bonds. So. Any other discussion? All right, hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you very
All right,
much.
thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is item E2. This is the deficit elimination plan. So it really, as a result of today's meeting and final work with the audit and, presentation here, we now know that there's some reporting that we have to do, and we kind of added this on so that it didn't spill past the deadline.
Yeah, we were really waiting for final information from the auditors to be able to have this ready to go. But our special assessment fund, as in years past, is in a deficit. That's because we outlay funds in advance of these projects, and it's just a timing matter. You cut that year end, you don't know where you are with payments, bonds, issues, that kind of stuff. So it's really just notifying them that yes, we're aware of the plan. We have a plan to repayment. We've used this format for the last 5 years, and we've never had an issue with being accepted. So we asked the board adopt the resolution approving the deficit elimination.
So, and again, this just shows how we're going to collect the deficit, being that we put out money for road SADs, and these are previous projects, but back at a time when we might not have been getting the interest, return on investment, and this was a way to use fund balance to finance some of those road projects. The deficit is really us kind of acting like a bank, sort of, on behalf of our residents, but getting a decent rate of return for our fund balance. We've approved these in the past, very similar after audits, and we'll probably have to do so until 2031. Motion by Mr. Badkins, support by Mr. Brado. Any discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Mr. Backens?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. Olgiati?
Yes.
Mrs. Rose is excused. Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Burkowski?
Yes. Thank you. Right, next on our agenda is item F1 regarding waterfront park shoreline project. So, board members, waterfront parks shoreline has been in need of reconstruction for many years. We applied for a Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund grant, MNRTF grant, in 2018 to help fund the work. We were awarded $156,000 and began the design of the work in 2019. The project went to bid during COVID, and we did not receive any bids. So we stepped back, looked at modifying the design and simplifying the scope of work, but not much after that, we were awarded the ARPA funds, 2021. So then we saw an opportunity to make improvements to the park on a bigger scale, and which not only involves softening the shoreline, but adding a fishing pier. So Wade Trim revised the designs. We applied for permits during the public comment period. We did hear from residents from neighboring properties about their concerns. I met with them on site. We suggested changes based on their input. Neighbors seemed to be satisfied with that. Submitted that to Army Corps. So Eagle and Army Corps approved those changes, and the plans were updated, sent out for bid, and we have attached in your board packet is the bid recommendation letter from Wade Trim, suggesting that the bid be awarded to EC Cornefeld. They were the low bidder. Just look at some of their reference projects, included the Detroit River Walk, and they also constructed the Blossom Heath Park Pier, which were both beautiful projects, and certainly, I would say, probably bigger than what we're proposing. So I feel like we're dealing with the low bidder is definitely a qualified contractor. It's important to note that the suggested award, the bid is $1,304,975. There's also a recommendation to include a 10% contingency from our engineering firm, just to say, in the event that there's changes. The likelihood, I just don't really see this project as something where we're gonna uncover something that's unknown.
No,
But-
we probably already made the one change that we would make in the middle, but they had a proposal to use composite decking as opposed to.
Well, I think it was thicker, so it was
Or,
2 by
yeah,
8
sorry,
instead of
yeah.
1 by 6
Yeah, thicker
composite
decking.
decking, yep. So just a more sturdy, form of decking. So there is the proposed recommendation for, motion is to award the project in the amount of, with a 1.3 million. There is a suggestion by our, engineer that we include some contingency, and that contingency is whatever this board wants. Historically, we've included 10%, but it can be any amount. And then also just making sure that everybody understands that the majority of this money is general fund money, which is really ARPA money. So we rolled 1.523 million of ARPA dollars in. This is gonna, consume the bulk of that, over 1.1 million that would be from the general fund. So when the auditor was saying, well, you went from 12 to 15 months, if we move forward with this project, we're gonna be back down to 12 months of revenue. But, as we discussed when we talked about this previously, we do think that park is used constantly by fishermen. And I think the balance of those ARPA dollars, we're gonna be talking about in the near future. Once this project, if we choose to move forward, once this project is slated, timed, we'll have to close the park, and I think we're gonna talk about using some of the rest of those ARPA funds to update the bathhouse, make some improvements to, put a new roof on it, some siding, make some improvements to the plumbing and facilities inside. At this time, based on informal conversations with our building department and conversations with this contractor, the contractor is looking at starting maybe, say, October 1st, when most of the use at that park kind of tapers off, working through the winter and trying to be ready for the spring. That same timeline kind of coincides with when our building department is typically a little bit slower. And so our building official has agreed to kind of assess that bathhouse, kind of act as the general contractor, if you will, to get that work done. So as opposed to hiring some firm and having them step on all the prices, we're looking at the building department kind of working together through the slower months to kind of evaluate that and source the work. That'll come as a future proposal, but kind of just so you know what's on the horizon. So the request at this time is awarding the project to EC Cornfell. I think there's a need to include some contingency. And then, I don't know if we want to incorporate or with a separate motion, have a discussion. I feel like it's really two separate motions to talk about the construction engineering. So the first request would be to award the project. Their bid is 1.304 million and maybe some contingency in there. And it can be a flat percent, it can be a flat amount.
Does anyone have any strong opinions about the contingency amount? I mean, I'm comfortable making a motion, but if someone was like, I want to set a dollar amount versus a percentage,
Don't we generally add 10,
usually it's 10%.
10, sometimes even 20%?
Well, on a project this size, usually the bigger the scale of the project, the smaller the contingency amount we set aside.
Right.
Because,
And there aren't really a lot, like, this project isn't really loaded with unknowns, right?
Right.
Like, it isn't as if we're gonna say, oh, well, you know, instead of riprap, you should use some other kind of a material. But just the same, there could be things that come up along the way where the contractor said, based on our experience constructing these, we might wanna suggest that you change this material or that material, or, you know, the way the pier is designed, but we don't know of any of those changes, and oftentimes when we're here, contractors are already telling us, we suggest you make this change. So,
I'm okay with a little bit more than 5%, like $65,025, takes it to an even $1,370,000.
I make a motion to award the contract to EC Cornfell in the amount of
1.37 million? Is that your suggestion?
Yeah.
5%, a little bit over 5%.
Yeah. And we can always come back if we need it, and I'm okay with that.
The total amount, 1.327.
Yeah, not to exceed. Yep. All right.
Support.
A motion by Mr. Witt, with support by Mr. Badkins. That sounds fine to me. Like I say, I really don't see this as being something where we're gonna run into unknowns, but,
Do you know if, I thought that there was an issue with the, that pump station,
On the
that
north
line
side
that
of the
goes
park?
to the lake
Mhm.
had failed? Had that been repaired? Is that?
so we looked at that. So first and foremost, it's massively oversized.
Yeah, I know that it was quite large, and I don't know how that's gonna work when it gets to the lake.
So at this point, what we looked at was, in terms of infrastructure, that's, you know, the erosion that we experienced there was a result of the high water, right? So when some of these drains tend to stay empty, we don't have the issue. When they fill up or they go up and down, it's when they tend to cause some of the erosion. So we did have the thing TV'd. We did have that drain TV'd. We identified the areas where there was a problem. It's not super deep, so we were able to excavate, uncover it, make repairs to the corrugated metal pipe. But if we were to say, hey, let's completely replace that, we're talking big, big money. And the majority of it appears to be in pretty decent shape. So
So
at
it
this
was
point,
repaired.
yeah, so so it's been repaired.
They put a
We're go-
saddle where there was a hole.
Where there were
to
holes,
replace.
yep.
Okay.
We're going to extend it so that there isn't a cavity in that northern corner. So we'll extend the discharge out. But at this point, it's kind of like, you know, it's a sleeping dog. It's not in bad shape. It's gonna need it, but it's got life. So,
Okay.
any other discussion? Hearing? Oh,
I was gonna say, if anybody has had a chance to go down to the bridge and, or the pier in Blossom Heath, it's absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it's really, really nice. I mean,
Yeah.
I went down there last fall and walked the entire thing, and I was shocked at how nice it was. So
Yeah.
if this company is that confident they can do work like that, I feel very confident with their ability to do this project nicely.
Yeah, for sure.
And experience with projects like these are the kinds that lead to somebody making it, like, giving us better guidance on a decision.
Right.
You're out in the field, like, well, if you do it this way, we've noticed it works better. You're like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to thank you for the residents in that particular area. I know there were some questions people had some, and Ken was very, very good in terms of coming up with alternate options that they could have input in, and, we just had our meeting in that area of the community, and they're very excited about having the park done, and they're much more receptive and comfortable with it, so thank you for that.
Yeah, well, they had some reasonable concerns. We made some adjustments. We repositioned the pier. We shortened it slightly. You know, I think if we were replacing a pier and the pier was 150 feet and we replaced it with an 80-foot pier, people would say, it's not the same as the old pier. But the fact is, there's never been a fishing pier there. And when this is done, this is gonna extend more than 100 feet from the shoreline out into the lake with plenty of, a nice platform out there and plenty of opportunities. It'll be ADA compliant, so even more people will be able to access that site for fishing. So I think it's a pretty cool project. All right, any other discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, we have a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Badgins to award the waterfront park shoreline project to E.C. Cornefeld in the amount not to exceed $1.37 million. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. On this same subject, I did pass out, so when I submitted this, I had kind of reached back out to Wade Trim and said, hey, I don't know anything about construction engineering, and, you know, what needs do we have? We received this estimate actually on Friday. They revised it today. And so they identified some of the scope of work and a potential cost. So I think the letter is pretty self-explanatory. Pre-construction meetings, contract administration during the project, they kind of oversee pay requests, making sure that if there's changes, additions, subtractions, has this work been performed, so forth. Physical inspection on site, any potential changes that the contractor might make to shop drawings, construction progress meetings, kind of finalizing the project, and any material testing, certification, soil borings, things like that. So when I saw the number, I said, holy cats, man, 126 grand to, spend 1.3 million, right? So I did have a conversation with the principals on this project, Scott and Matt, folks we've been dealing with. And I indicated my concern that I thought it was high, so we walked through it, and what they said was, like items 1 through 7, we're not certain that there's gonna be a need for additional materials testing, certification, soil borings. But if there is such a need, we would come forward with that, and we would include that in our cost. We know we need a pre-construction meeting. We know number 2 is gonna happen. Number 3 is a big variable. The having someone on site doing inspection and representing the township throughout the project is a variable. Contractor said they're looking at potentially 3 to 4 weeks, 3 to 4 months of the fall and 3 to 4 months of the spring, and so they kind of identified, 12 weeks full-time, 12 weeks half-time, 8 weeks, 10 hours. And so what I said was, well, okay, we could have a contractor that we're concerned with, that maybe is cutting corners or shows us evidence that they're, not doing a good job. But inversely, we could have a contract where we say, man, these guys are really, taking care of business, and they seem to be on the up and up. So we've discussed the idea that we, the township, can scale some of this inspection and potentially lower this cost. My anticipation is if the board chooses to approve Wade Trim to do the construction engineering, our number's gonna come in under that. They'll invoice us monthly based on the work that's performed, and we kind of have that opportunity to say, okay, like, I can't eliminate, pre-construction meeting, contract administration with change orders, so someone has to do that. We're not equipped to do that. But we can definitely scale up, down, the inspection time. But at this point, they're giving us a budgetary figure of 126.4 for the contract, for the construction administration. We can approve, this board can move forward, they cannot move forward, we can approve any amount, including that amount or some amount less. But approving this contract doesn't mean we are obligating ourselves to spend the 126. It's a budgetary figure that we're going to manage based on how that work progresses.
Yeah, and this is really different than a road paving projects where it's a constant flow of materials that they're measuring,
Unit
getting
prices.
tickets from, on unit pricing. This is a fixed cost contract for the most part, so there's not the same need to have somebody there watching,
Right.
The material's gonna be there, we can check and make sure they use the right stone, they use the right decking material.
Right, this project is 1.304 million, period. That's what it is, it's a lump sum. They don't get to come back and say, oh, well, steel went up, or we needed to, this is your price, we told you what to build, this is what you're getting. So this isn't a unit price project where things are gonna go up and down based on unknowns underground. So because of that, my instinct is that I felt like this was a conservatively high figure. And Wade Trim confirmed that, but the position they were in was, we don't wanna tell you we can do it for 80 grand and then find that, we're coming back asking for more later. I would certainly say the number before us is worst case. And so because of that, if the board is uncomfortable with that, we can say, because we're gonna basically spend this as we go over several months, we can approve something less than 126. If we say, it's too high, I won't spend any more than this much on construction management.
My personal, because that was my thought, is if we said oh, we're gonna set it at $80,000 or something, pick a number we feel comfortable with. There's a lot of things that just, they cost and we can't get around them.
Right, and yeah, some of this is must do, right? If we find that there's a need for a soil boring and the contractor said, hey, we've encountered a concern, we've gotta do it. There's no sense in moving forward with this project. Conducting some of the meetings, some of the change orders, when the contractor says, I wanna be paid X amount of dollars, someone needs to be able to say, yes, we know this much work has been completed, we don't have staff that we can put out there full-time to oversee this. But I think we can scale back some of the other areas in here, and if we run into issues with unknowns, again, we can always come back to the board.
This isn't urgent, this doesn't impact people's life if we're
Right.
delayed a week to come to the board to ask.
Correct, this is gonna be, if we approve some amount less than this, and we find that we've got a problem, there's an explanation and a request for this additional funds in January or February, not as if it's, holding up the progress of the project. So with that, I'm open for discussion, questions, or a motion.
I guess, I did the math at the bottom, it's approximately $800.
It is $800, that's their
$800.
estimate, yep. For the infield, just the infield inspection. So that's
That
just.
does not include.
That
any
doesn't
of the
include the other stuff.
Pre-con, construction management stuff.
Right.
So, on the spillway engineering, they were the highest bidder.
They were, that's correct.
And I appreciate that they put this package out, right? Received the quotes, reviewed it all. Clearly, they know the job,
Correct.
clearly.
Right.
But we're gonna have another engineering company working a quarter mile down the road on the spillway bridge. We didn't ask them for a price.
So no, historically, we have typically associated, whenever possible, design engineering with construction engineering. Meaning that, so let's say when we talk about that bridge, it's a blank sheet of paper. We have a fancy idea of what we want.
Wade Trim drew a pretty drawing.
Right, they did some preliminary engineering, but they don't have the cornerstone of that project locked up in their vault. Anybody can design that bridge, so I was comfortable going for that. When it comes to this project, and I said I'd like a number for construction engineering, historically, we've awarded construction engineering to the design engineering firm unless there's federal dollars that block us from doing that. So, but just the same, when I saw this number, I was like, you know what? Do I go out for bid on this? And my position is that I don't know that that's the answer, because someone's coming in cold on this, they can say, well, it's a matter of public knowledge, they bid 126.4, I'm gonna bid, less than that. But when it comes right down to it, this is like they didn't call it a not to exceed, but it's like, this is the worst case if we have to do all the things that we need to do. And we have the ability to say, no, I'm not paying for that.
Well, on the last line of this is if it goes over 32 weeks, we're gonna be billed at T&M.
Correct.
So it's not a not to exceed, it's all dependent on the contract.
Right, but it
Basically,
could be,
if it exceeds the scope of work that they priced out. Because that's what
Right.
they did was T&M, based on their expectation.
right. The point being that they're not saying it's 126.4, period. It could be more or less, and I'm saying it's more or less based on our direction to them as to how much inspection we want. And so, my instinct is, we're dealing with a big contractor, this job is not over their head, it's not like I'm gonna go out there and say, what the heck are you guys doing? So I don't know that I need 40 hours a week of inspection, of on-site management. And so, the conversation was, with Wade Trim, was that I'd have a conversation with the board. Based on the direction of the board, I'm gonna come back to you and say, we want this scope of work. We want this level of participation. I need to have some, progress meetings. Somebody needs to be on top of this job and know what's going on. The contractor needs someone to communicate with that can say, yeah, I think this is a better idea. I don't think there's anyone in our staff that's qualified to talk about some of those engineering decisions. So there's some of these things we have to pay someone to do, but I don't think we need the level of work that they've proposed.
I think if we were gonna look at bidding out these types of project moving forward, that's a more holistic discussion on engineering firm as a whole, not, I don't wanna be in a position where we're piecemealing everything, because that can lead to additional cost, I think, actually. So, like, if we're saying, like, we're maybe not comfortable with this, then that's a separate conversation from this specific.
Well, I'm not comfortable with this, it's double, it's 9.6%, where the pedestrian bridge was 4.7% in engineering cost. So if you're asking me if I'm
But
comfortable with it.
that's design, not construction engineering, that cost. I don't think it included construction engineering cost. It doesn't.
But just the same, to your point, when I saw the number, I was like, what the heck?
So I'm not-
Adam
Oh, yeah,
Adam
we're all on the
was,
same-
Adam
all on
was
the
at
same page
conference, and I said, well, as soon as Adam comes in, I'm gonna sit down with him and say, hey, what do you think? We felt the same way.
That's
I had the
exactly what we did.
conversation.
Honestly,
them?
I think they're the right company for the job, however, I would like to see something from them. All these projects we give them I'll say on a T&M basis, how close are they pushing up against every single, we've had this conversation before. What I'd really like to see is, you could take 50 grand off this because of the engineering we didn't perform on the SAD road or whatever. I would like to see something like that. I've never seen a credit.
Well,
I've never
But
seen,
but they don't bill that way, Brian.
they bill on T&M, right?
Right.
Well,
if
some
they're-
projects are lump sum, some are not to exceed. So some projects we have are not to exceed prices, and they bill us as they go. Some are lump sum. So when they say, for example, road paving projects, they say, this is our lump sum to do the engineering for that, and that's what it is.
I would feel a lot different if they weren't the highest bidder by double on the bridge.
I agree
I
with
would
you.
say that they're staying constant and competitive. There's no doubt they know the township, there's no doubt they got their hands all over this project.
Right.
I would feel a lot better if we tabled this and we came up with a scope of work that was more defined. And then maybe it's 110 grand.
But
Maybe it
I don't
comes
think
into
we can't define it better, Brian, because if the contractor takes longer, and we say we need, and it becomes complex, we need more on-site, more time, right? So that's why they gave it as a T&M, as opposed to a not to exceed amount, or a flat rate amount, because their control over how much they're doing inspection is not their control. It's between the contractor and us.
Did the contractor provide a schedule?
Not yet, we haven't awarded the project yet.
So once it's awarded a project, I would like to see what they've included.
Right, but
Project-
we won't get to a schedule until we get to our pre-con meeting. So if we said, hey, let's approve $60,000, which is half this amount, and we can work through the schedule, because a lot of the cost is some of the upfront, the contract administration, like there's some of those fixed costs. It doesn't have to be exactly 60. I bet we could get to a certain point with 50, right? But set a lesser amount tonight so we can get the ball rolling, because I think we are gonna run into timelines with the contractor making sure we're on their calendar for the winter. That's a prime spot for us to be.
So I would just interject this. We're not in a time constraint from the standpoint that the contractor's chomping at the bit, ready
Starting
to
October
go,
1st.
and I gotta have an engineering firm lined up. I need an engineering firm before I can move forward, but I can definitely, we've awarded the work, right? I need an engineering firm, and like you, I believe they're the right firm for the job. They made it clear during my discussion with them, saying, you know, I'm just concerned because I think I've got board members gonna look at this and say, holy cow, this is a lot of funds. And they said, well, we recognize that. If you want us to alter this or lower that number, we can. So you're like, okay, well then, you start to understand. They were saying, this is worst, this is what we perceive to be worst case. But we're gonna bill you monthly based on the actual direction you give us in terms of what services we perform. So, we don't have to do anything tonight, so we're not up against the timeline, number one. Number two, I think we're speaking the same thing when we say Wade Trim is the right firm to do the work. So my instinct is we award the work to them so we can begin the project, but we can approve an amount of total expenditure that's less and just say, you know, this is where the board is, and if we get to a point where we say, oh, wow, project is really going long, or we're running into delays, and we have legitimate measurables for why we need more than an amount we approved today, we can always come back and talk about that then. But I don't want you to feel like we're up against the deadline, we gotta award it today. But just the same, I don't see where I would give this work to anyone else, based on the fact that they're most familiar with it, they designed it, you know, they've been involved in this process since, probably 2019.
No, I agree with that comment. I think they're the best persons for the job. But like every other company on the planet right now, there's A players, there's B players, C players, D players, go right down the list. So, where's the names? Where's the resumes that are gonna support this project?
Well-
Are they the ones that designed it? That's what I would like to see from them. I'm just saying that that's my personal opinion. If the board's okay with it, but a lot of this, really, honestly, I'd give them $15,000 to do the pre-construction meeting, and I'd like to sit in that meeting. I'd like to hear what the contractor has to say about how he's gonna schedule the job, how he's gonna lay the job out on a schedule.
Right.
Microsoft projects. I'd like to see manpower. I'd like to see the contractor's work chart and how it lines up to the people that are actually doing the work. So their resume looks pretty good.
Yes,
I
there's no
can't-
question. The
they got-
contractors, I think.
They're a
are
good contractor, and I'm familiar with them, but not that this would ever happen, but a lot of times when people have interns laying around, they need a place to charge them.
Sure.
They sometimes, and I know you guys watch that,
No.
not saying we let this stuff slip through our fingers. I would just like to see the person that designed it, it's gonna be the person on site.
Yeah,
I'd like to sit.
I don't think anyone's gonna do that.
No,
They're not
that's-
gonna take a designer and stick him out in the field for 12 weeks. That's
I mean,
not how.
we've
that's-
never had that.
Right. We're gonna have a relationship between that designer, whoever that field person is. But to your point, this is what I saw. When I looked at this number, and I looked at 800 hours as the bulk of what I figured the expense to be, because the reality is, like, the materials testing, I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's gonna happen, but they've included a figure for that. Closing out the contract, you know, processing pays and shop drawing submittals. Well, maybe there's no shop drawings. Maybe they say, we're good with everything the way it is. But there's a communication back and forth. We'd like to use these fasteners for the decking, right? There's some of that stuff, but that's not the bulk of what I think we're talking about. But I looked at it and I thought, I could probably find some retired individual that's got a pretty good construction background and say, hey, I'll pay you X amount per hour to hang out here, and I could do a lot less than this.
What's the material testing required for the contractor? Do we know that?
That's the whole point. What they've tried to
this
do
was-
is
this-
all-encompassing list of what they anticipated.
The material testing would be like, probably an unexpected item for the most part.
Correct. There's some contracts, there's some concrete work. There's a huge slab that goes in at the end of this pier. It's like a 10 by 10 by 10 cube that everything ties to, that, you know.
I didn't know if the DNR or DEQ requires soil samples from what we're putting.
We're not removing any material. And that's
But you're
where
putting stuff on top of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's usually, they buy it from a place that is certified clean kind of thing,
Yeah.
so they approve for the year.
The point being that we can approve, we can do anything, we can do nothing, we can approve any amount we want, but the point is, this is what they identified as if we had to do this, if we had to do that, if we had all this on-site, so on and so forth. They identified if you need us to show you a lower number, I can give you this document with a lower number. What that tells me is that they didn't say, this isn't a fixed price, this is worst case, this is kind of what we were figuring, but, it will be, if we approve this work, it will be overseen and managed by us.
So everything that I see here, on the bottom, hours, 12 weeks, 40 hours for inspection. 12 weeks, 20 hours for inspection. I don't see any pre-construction conversation in this 800 hours.
No, that 12, 12, and 8 is specifically line item number 3. So when you look at line item number 3, project representation and inspection, that's just that line item is $800.
And I think that.
And I think it's way too high. I really feel like if you're just taking trucks of riprap and dropping them in the water, I don't know how much I got to inspect that. I don't feel like that's the one where you pull a fast one on me and.
Well, the first line item is pre-construction, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Second line item, construction contract administration, including pay certifications and change orders. That's after construction starts.
That's during the process, as they say, here, we have an invoice, we're at 20%, we did this much work. They're saying, yes, we agree, that's an appropriate amount, and they then tell us, you can pay this amount on that contract.
Is there any way they'll give us a breakdown on that?
You mean the time? When they invoice us, they always do.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, you mean
One-
they're at cost?
Because
for
right
that.
now, the 800 hours is $158 an hour, which is about,
Which is clearly not, that's the whole point, because I did the same math, and I was like, for $158 an hour, but that $800 doesn't include number 1, doesn't include number 2, doesn't include number 4, doesn't include number 5, doesn't include number 6, doesn't include number 7. So, when you fund all of those other line items, it's not $158 an hour. But even more so, I don't think I need 800 hours of inspection.
I mean, how many hours are they planning for pre-construction? You know, the more information I have, probably the less questions I'll ask on this, because this is just one board member's opinion that this, I would say you pay them for pre-construction while we sort this thing out. And if, maybe we get to the 126.4. Maybe we do, maybe
But we
we
could
don't.
probably get a breakdown of.
I would like to
1,
see
2,
that.
4, 5,
We
6,
can table
7.
it, ask for a further breakdown. We can approve it for an amount less than 126. Right, so that's really our options. We can say, I want a breakdown of items 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7. But, and this is where, in the end, they're gonna put a bunch of numbers on that paper, but it doesn't mean that's what's gonna happen. That's all of their guesses, but they're gonna actually bill us for what's done. So when they say, I need $4,000 for a pre-con meeting, I'm gonna say, there were 2 of you there for 4 hours. Or through 2 hours, like, how'd you get to $4,000? What are you getting, $1,000 an hour?
Well, there's probably some stuff that happens in the office,
Always.
paperwork, stuff like that.
Correct.
I understand that, sort of, I get that portion of it. I just struggle with the number, you know, and what we're talking about based on what we're seeing, to your point. If that 800 hours, you take that off, is pre-construction $26,400? Then I'll make a motion to approve $26,400 for pre-construction. I'd like to sit in a room with them and with the contractor at that pre-construction. Does the contractor know if it goes over 32 weeks, he's on the hook for this extra cost?
Right, but again, this, I agree 100%, but this letter was drafted saying, based on what we know now, this is a target.
They engineered it, so they can't say what we know now. They were out there, they did samples, they did everything they should have done to engineer it.
Right.
So if anybody knows it, it's them, so.
That isn't the issue as much as they don't control the contractor.
Or
So
the
what-
weather.
Right, the conditions, the other variables that could lead. So my point to you is, I kind of feel like we're on the same page. I'm not comfortable asking this board to approve 126.4. I am comfortable asking this board to to approve some amount for Wade Trim to do the work, because I think they're the right firm to do the work. And if we approve some lesser amount, then we say, let's try to work with this as our goal and adjust what our inspection time is. We can do something much less, knowing that we're gonna come back and talk about it again, or we can say, like,
Given the discussion we've had tonight, I don't think it makes sense to move forward if we're not gonna run it, we were gonna award the contract, have them break down what their estimated costs are for each of these items, so there's a breakdown, and then we can set the budget for three that we think is more reasonable.
yeah, I'm okay with that. The point is that I feel like when all is said and done, we can kind of just turn around and say, I'll approve 75,000 at this point. I don't wanna spend any more than that, and figure it out, make it work. Because that's really what we're kind of talking about here. We feel like this is a pretty large scope. If we find we need to do some soil testing, well, then we'll come back and talk about that.
Well, if we approve a lesser amount being $75,000, and, so basically we would be up to $75,000. After that, everything else that would need to be done would be à la carte, basically.
It would have to come back before this board.
So,
And that's the point I'm trying to make. Like, I feel like we can, this isn't something we're saying, this is what the number is. We're approving a budget. And we're saying, we're willing to spend this, and if we find that the contractor is problematic or running into some weather issues, there's plenty of time between now and the day we spend the last part of that 75,000 for this board to be informed and understand that we've run into things beyond our control. And there's gonna be a need for that budget to move forward. So I have no problem tabling it, asking for a breakdown, but in the end, it isn't gonna change what we're gonna do. Our action is to say, we're gonna draw a line and say, we're willing to spend this much at this point and no more. The breakdown isn't really gonna change.
At $100 an hour, number three's 80 grand. The balance, round number.
Yep.
The balance of those other 6 items is $46,000.
Right,
How does it break down? That's all. That's all. I'm very curious about that.
right,
Is it junior people? Is it senior people?
For on-site inspection, it's junior people.
yeah, it's
Since-
June.
Always with a field maintenance supervisor over. That they respond to.
No, that's all there.
For a field inspection supervisor, I said the wrong.
Wade Trim.
Yeah.
Correct. But in the end, what I'm saying is if they give us a breakdown, and it comes out to 126,4, right? And we assume this much for materials, we assume this much, this, we're still gonna say, well, I don't wanna approve 126,4, so from my
Right.
perspective, all I'm saying is a breakdown doesn't change how I vote. I'm saying I'm not interested in awarding, I'm not interested in agreeing to 126,4 for construction management. I kinda feel like I can back into that by saying, I'm willing to draw a line here, and let's figure out if we can do that, and if we can't, we'll come back and talk about it.
So,
But the breakdown isn't, it's not like the breakdown's gonna come back and that 126,4 is gonna be different. It's
no, it's gonna be the same, right? I understand that. So if we could just get the breakdown, and then did we get a copy of the contractor's, proposal for the bridge?
Yeah, that was.
Not for the bridge, I'm sorry,
For the pier, yeah. It was
we
in,
have a copy of that, right?
I think it was in the last board packet, didn't we? Or this,
The bridge, no.
Not for the bridge, I'm sorry.
Oh,
For
I got
the
it.
pier.
for this.
Pier.
Right,
The
no.
pier, we don't, because the bid was literally a number that said, yes, it's a one unit, $1.305 million.
Okay, where's the?
It was
scope of
actually
work?
1.2.
What did he bid?
They're huge, so I have the bid
Is that the
documents.
Wade Trim login that Dave,
It's something about that, about inch and a half thick.
yeah, there's
right?
only about 10 pages that I want to see.
Right.
Yeah,
So
yeah, so.
that would be the scope of work. If somebody could extract that, that would be a good thing.
Yeah, so I have, the collection of bids was 14,6 and almost 2. So it was 22, megs of data, so I didn't email every bid. But in terms of the bids as they came in, which is in the award letter, we had, it was really 1.29, but, one of the firms suggested 2x8 decking instead of 1x6 decking. So we've got a 1.304, 1.396, 1.692, 1.776, and 2.432. So within that, there's a pretty healthy spread across those contractors.
And I know that Wade Trim went through those in detail and vetted them all out. But if that's a link that could be sent out, that would be,
So Brian, you're looking at item number 3 at about $80,000 max, correct?
At $100 an hour, even a junior person that works for an engineering company, $100 an hour.
So would you be comfortable approving $80,000 to get started on this, and then having them come back with breakdowns on the other items when we need them?
Let me just say this, before you answer that question. I'm not prepared to approve 800 hours of inspection. I don't think that's what's gonna be needed. So, for me, I think, like I say, I think that approving 80 grand to do the whole dang thing is kind of our sign to them to say this, you gotta figure this out. We feel like this number is high. We're gonna set a budgetary amount that's lower than that and work toward getting in with that number. And if there's a reason we can't hit that number, there's a conversation this board has with factual reasons why we had to do something different. So, again, I'm saying to you, based on this conversation, I'm comfortable going back to them saying, the board said 75 is our target. We need to work toward that, because I don't think we're gonna have 800 hours. I don't think I need someone there 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for certain parts of this construction.
If we did 75 grand, it's under 6%. You know what I mean, under 6% for contract administration and, you know, like on-site engineering and inspection.
And I have no problem tabling it, but my point is the decision, what information can I give you? We say that number seems high, I don't wanna pay that much, I wanna pay a lesser amount. So that's why I kinda feel like we need to steer the ship, not say, well, give me more information. If there's no information they can give me that's gonna make me agree to 126 for it. That's the bottom line.
Well, why don't we approve 26-4 for the pre-construction meeting, have Brian there,
But
have
what,
him question.
the only thing is 26.4 is just an like, we can approve any amount, but I don't think the pre-con meeting is 20 grand.
It's not, but that doesn't mean that it can fly it somewhere else.
Right, yeah. Again, if you rather table it, I have no problem with it. My point is there isn't any information that they're gonna give me that's gonna make me agree to 126.
So we've selected the contractor, right? We
Yep.
got the contractor on board.
Correct.
Right? We just don't have an AE on board to do all the construction engineering.
Correct, correct.
So I think asking for a breakdown, because he told us 800 hours for number 3. Just, if I saw those numbers here today, right now, I would probably have a different opinion about it. But I feel the 800 hours is excessive.
I absolutely agree. But again, we get to determine
Yeah.
whether we do that. We can say, this is the amount of oversight we're asking. We simply don't really need someone there 8 hours.
And honestly.
And that was based off what the contractor told them in their
Sure.
schedule, it's 32 weeks.
I need 32 weeks, right? I get that. But the other part I'd like to know is, if you're gonna get this breakdown, Ken, maybe you can ask them about their T&M rates on the back.
It's what we've approved.
Do we have set rates with them?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think the conversation that if I go back, and again, I stated, I have no problem with it. If I go back and tell them I need a breakdown, I think what I'm likely to get is, like, they have a budgetary amount that's included in here for the materials testing, right? Okay, that's not a big deal. You've got some hourly rates, but I think what I'm gonna see is I'm gonna say, the board really had a hard time with 126, and frankly, I don't think I was gonna get them to agree to 126. So they're likely going to give us a revised proposal with probably some lower assumptions. And if I'm saying this is the most hours I'm doing for inspection, and you ask me to do more, I'm gonna be coming back and ask for more money. So,
Well, maybe this is the best deal, but I just can't.
I don't think it
Look at
is.
this and say, this makes sense right now.
I think it's heavy, which is why I'm saying, I think approving some lesser amount.
Is 2
makes
weeks
sense.
gonna kill it?
No, no,
Okay.
no. So I have no problem tabling this. But that breakdown and proposal may come back for a lesser amount, because my instinct is they're gonna say, all right,
Vibe check.
right, they indicated it, they said, if you need us to lower that estimate, we can, which is the reason why I'm saying to you, they're saying this is an open-ended amount, we're not sure, but we can guess lower, but obviously, we're saying if we exceed that amount, we want T&M. So, you know what I mean? That's them saying, this is what we think is ugly. It could be less than that, but we're gonna invoice you monthly and break down those costs. So I didn't feel like they said, we can give you a lesser amount because they said, we put a bunch of fat in there. We can guess lower. That's what they're basically saying. They're not gonna pay someone less money per hour because we asked them not.
Understood.
Right? So, All right. Next on the agenda would be item F2 regarding the ordinance. So we did have a discussion about this just before the meeting. But again, currently, we have appeals processes in place for when someone may ask for something and they're denied that. I was emailed to everybody. I emailed it out.
Got it.
And so, right now, when someone asks for a lot split, the assessor basically grants or denies the lot split based on the conditions. So the ordinance spells out, you can do this, you can't do that. So if the request for a lot split creates a non-conforming lot, the assessor has to deny that lot split. But if the non-conformity is 2 feet, or if the request creates, in other words, if somebody comes in and says, I'd like to split off a 20-foot piece and sell it, well, that doesn't seem like that makes a whole lot of sense. But if the requested lot split results in a 78-foot lot in an 80-foot zone, and you're like, well, this is probably one where we should kind of bend a little bit. We don't have a mechanical process to consider those things. And so that typically results in litigation, and litigation is in circuit court for those matters, and it automatically results in some cost. And so while I'm not out to get Mr. Huth, the question would be, we might have one that's a request that's really silly, and the answer is obviously no. But if we have one where it's obvious that the answer should be yes, why are we making this person go to circuit court? So in discussions with Rosemary, we talked about what mechanism could we put in place. So she said, well, we could adopt an ordinance that includes an appellate process. Then we said, okay, who should the appeals body be? So at first, the obvious assumption was zoning board of appeals. But this isn't really a zoning issue, it's in our zoning ordinance, but the lot split runs through the assessing office, which is under the purview of the supervisor. Secondly, since the current way to do this is through litigation, if someone's denied a lot split and they have to go to circuit court, that results in this board making a decision to spend money at a circuit court level to vehemently fight or to conveniently, friendly agreement to form a consent judgment. But the point is that the decision on whether to oppose a lot split or to agree to a lot split that's non-conforming really kind of falls on this board, because we're going to be the board that's going to make the decision whether we're going to spend $1,000 or $10,000 in circuit court. So we came to the conclusion that the Board of Trustees should be the appellate body. I asked Rosemary to draft that ordinance. Because it's a modification to the zoning ordinance, they had to go to the planning commission. They looked at it in May, they looked at it June. They wanted to change one of the words from may to shall. And then last week, they recommended the approval or adoption of this ordinance with that minor change. Rosemary made that change, sent it out this morning. Is it an emergency? No. I currently have 2 property owners in the township who are wanting to make a request to do a lot split that will just be denied. And out of respect to their time, I'm trying to move this along as fast as possible. It's been noticed twice on the planning commission, so it's not like it's coming out of nowhere. The planning commission's talked about it publicly twice. Today's action would only introduce the ordinance. It still has to be published, right? And
Yes.
then adopted at a future meeting. So, I don't feel like we're pulling a fast one on anybody because we added this to the agenda. We're not taking final action tonight. We still have a process of advertisement.
So you're looking for a motion to
Introduce.
introduce the ordinance
Correct. And
and post it publicly?
correct.
I'll make that motion.
All right. And Mr. Witt normally writes these, so, I don't know exactly, there's usually a bunch of language that needs to be behind there for,
Yeah, it's introduce the ordinance to amend Articles 16 of the Charter Township Garrison zoning ordinance to amend Section 1601, non-conforming lot of record, division of non-conforming lot, providing the township board the authority to approve deviations regarding the non-conforming lot divisions, providing for repeal or severability and effective date, and direct the township clerk to provide a notice of introduction in the paper and have a copy available in the clerk's office for review.
So that would be, that's what I was saying. I knew it's kind of a little particular, so.
Well, there's two ways you can do it. You can either put the entire ordinance in the paper and it's really expensive, or you can publish a notice of posting and then you have the full copy available in the office. So that's why we adopted with that wording to clarify which process we're taking.
Yeah, so I felt like it's important to have that. So
Yep.
is there support?
Support.
All right, got a motion by Mr. Brado with support by Mr. Olgiati to introduce this ordinance revision. Any discussion?
Is there, regarding lot size? I mean, if we allow someone a 78 foot, right, I mean, I understand, we wanna, the one we looked at earlier today, right?
Yeah.
So it's gonna be 2 feet under, right?
Yeah.
Is there a numbers or a percentage?
No, so
It's gonna
that's,
be a case-by-case
that's,
basis?
that's the whole point. Like,
Which
when you-
probably opens you up for more of a lawsuit.
No, so the potential for a lawsuit is a denial, not an approval, right? But we recognize that if I deny you, I am now potentially facing a lawsuit. But if what you ask me for is ridiculous enough, I'm gonna deny it. Because I'm basically saying, no, I'm not agreeing to this. But for the poster children of the best examples of when we should approve it, right now, we have no mechanism to do this. So this doesn't mean this prevents any litigation, but it will almost certainly prevent friendly litigation, because we can just say, yeah, that's a reasonable request, and let's move forward
Somebody
with it.
comes in and wants to cut 30 foot off, that's a lot different than 2 feet. right?
There's.
Understood.
I can tell you, some of the requests, I sit and I tell someone you can't do that, and you're like, I feel terrible, because this is a pretty obvious and logical action. But there is no mechanism. So this basically just gives us another tool, and if we say no, then it really didn't change anything anyways, because that person has the right to sue us. So, any other discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, this requires a roll call.
Yes, sir. Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. Olgiati?
Yes.
Mr. Backen?
Yes.
Mrs. Rose is excused. Mr. Cavanagh?
Yes.
Mr. Witt? Yes. Mr. Burkowski?
Yes. Okay, next on the agenda is item G, public comments. So we'll open the floor at this time for public comments. They can be about any subject you wish. We ask that you try to limit those to 5 minutes in length.
Board members, C. William Barnell, 27-year resident, clean cut, do-gooder boy next door. Clean up, fix up, people helping people, proud Blue Dog Democrat. Just want to remind everyone to please check out Save Lake St. Clair Facebook, press like and follow, stay up to date on everything that's going on. And hopefully one day our lake will be perfect and we can stop Oakland County from dumping, which ends up in our lake. Thank you so much, board members. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment. Is there any board comment?
I just want to make a note, I think we all received a letter from Candace Miller and, was it Don Brown?
We were copied on a letter
Copied on
that
an
she
email
sent
that-
to the state.
Phil, is it Roos, R-O-O-S?
I believe
The
so.
director of Eagle, and I just, she continues to fight for our lakes.
Yep.
And this letter is very representative of her feelings towards it, so I just wanted to recognize both of them. And I know how hard the county commissioners are trying to work with Oakland County as well, but just want to thank Ms. Miller and Don Brown for sending this letter over.
Absolutely, yeah. So really, starts out by just pointing out Macomb County is investing over $100 million to reduce combined sewer overflows. By year end, we will have successfully eliminated 75% of CSOs at Chappaqua, and also 50% at the Martin Retention Basin. But in the meantime, she lists the various, you know,
If the good comes to bad.
not only the fact that Oakland County hasn't made similar investments in recent years, but the various times when they violated their own permit. So like, you know, hey, state, come on, man.
And no teeth to the problem.
Right, it's just, it's, you know, so
Put it on our website.
June 4th of 2024, the discharge included an E. coli count of 76,000 926. 19,000 times worse than what our Macomb facilities discharge. And way, way over. I think 300 is their 2 or 300 parts per billion or ppb, whatever it
We
is.
should put this letter up on our website and let the newspapers grab it. I mean,
I'm sure the Public Works Commissioner will already share freely with the newspapers.
I have a similar feeling, but I agree with you. I think the work she's doing is great, and this is one of those things that you gotta just keep chirping about it.
Eagle will nail somebody for not pulling a permit for something that doesn't have any impact for water quality, but when you actually dump sewage in the water.
Violating the Clean
No
Water
problem.
Act, yeah,
Yeah.
just let it go, so.
so I just got an email. Tonight is the fireworks in Detroit,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Belle Isle has reached max capacity and it's closed for vehicles. First time in 40 years.
Yeah,
40 years that's never happened. Belle Isle's been at max.
yeah,
That's pretty
They
crazy.
only allow 3,000 cars.
That's crazy.
yeah, yeah.
So, thank you for the letter.
Yep, absolutely. Any other board comment? Hearing none, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there support? Support. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, board.
Larry, when we getting our new computers? Since I got you my numbers.
Isn't that coming up soon?
You,
I have a proposal.
you asked me for the numbers and